Hello folks, and welcome back to the Vision of Veritas. You ever notice how Democrats love to say that us Republicans, us conservatives, we love to fear-monger? And while I'm absolutely sure you can find some ridiculous examples out there, generally speaking, the left as a whole peddles fear-mongering as actual issues that need taken care of, that absolutely need brought up. And just to be clear, I didn't search and pick through things that specifically supported what I wanted to say here. In YouTube, I simply searched Republican fear-mongering, and I clicked on the third thing that came up or was displayed from this news now, and it's only from 2 years ago. Actually, it's perfect. It's from the beginning of Biden's installation into power. Now, what prompted me to do this was coming across a clip from MSNBC today that was trying to drive the point home Republicans are fear-mongering about the 2022 elections. Let's go ahead and watch this here.
Michael, we spoke the last time the president gave address about democracy and about the context for it, about how unprecedented it is. This speech seemed in some senses more specific about the developments that we're seeing everywhere, from the Arizona poll stalkers to the secretaries of state who refuse to say that they'll accept the elections. What do you view as the key takeaway of the speech tonight?
Well, he was absolutely candid, and he was absolutely right, because, as you know, Chris, 6 nights from now, we could all be discussing violence all over this country. There are signs that may happen, may God forbid, that losers will be declared winners by fraudulent election officers or Secretary of State candidates or governors or state legislatures. We could be 6 days away from losing our rule of law and losing a situation where we have elections that we all can rely on. You know, those are the foundation stones of a democracy. So if Biden had gone on the air tonight and said, biggest thing we have to worry about is, marginal tax rate or something like that, well, it is important. But what significant presidents do, I think you'll agree, we both write history, you and I. 1860, Lincoln didn't say biggest issue is land-grant colleges, although he felt strongly. He said the country can't survive half slave or half free. 1940, Franklin Roosevelt didn't say, the biggest thing I'm worried about is farm policy. Farm policy was important to him, but what he did say was, never before since Jamestown and Plymouth Rock has America been in such danger. Joe Biden is saying the same thing tonight. And a historian 50 years from now, if historians are allowed to write in this country, and if there are still free publishing houses and a free press, which I'm not certain of, but if that is true, a historian will say what was at stake tonight and this week was the fact whether we will be a democracy in the future, whether our children will be arrested and conceivably killed. We're on the edge of a brutal authoritarian system, and it could be a week away.
That entire clip that you heard, while being extremely speculative to the point where it's completely and utterly ridiculous, the entire thing was meant to fearmonger. I mean, actually fearmonger. I mean, listen to a portion of this again right here. They actually stated that they wonder if your children are going to be able to live. If you're the type of person to actually believe this type of rhetoric, you would be terrified by now.
Whether our children will be arrested and conceivably killed, we're on the edge of a brutal authoritarian system, and it could be a week away.
And as a side note, also take notice of how they set up the stage, so to speak, in order to deny these midterm elections if the elections don't go the way that they have planned. I mean, the hypocrisy there is astounding, and the media will run with it and report on it as fact if something happens and these midterms don't go the way of the Democrats. But anyhow, here is where that other clip that I was referring to comes in at. What you just heard was actual fear-mongering. I mean, I can't think of a more prime example of it. So let's go ahead and listen to what Democrats claimed Republicans said was fear-mongering as of 2 years ago to what actually happened over the past 2 years. And you can be the judge as to whether or not it was fear-mongering, or if it was simply the left trying to play down their agenda that was coming in the future.
No one will be safe in Biden's America.
It's a horror film, really.
You won't be safe in Joe Biden's America.
Your family will not be safe.
Well, is that true? Is there any validity to what you just heard? According to the left, everything that you just heard is completely ridiculous. It's fear-mongering. The very notion that crime could go up under Biden and would go up exorbitantly is unthinkable. But has crime gone down under Biden? Well, let's take a look here. And let's also look at what Biden's America thinks. These are 2001 stats because 2002, we're still in 2002. But as of 2001, the end of it, there was 73% less crime under Trump than there was Biden. 73%, not 7.3%, but 73%. You had 30% of overall Americans that felt unsafe. 57% of Asian Americans, 63% of Black Americans, 44% of Hispanic Americans, and 16% of white Americans. That 30% broken down, but overall, of that 30% of Americans feel unsafe. Currently under Biden's America. Because the left has been defunding police departments, homicides in 2021 have in some places increased exponentially. In Chicago, they're up 22%. In Los Angeles County, they're up 127%. In Minneapolis, they're up 113%. In Oakland, they are up 132%. And in Portland, Oregon, they are up 800%. So you tell me, you be the judge. Is this fear-mongering what Republicans had to say when Biden was placed into power? Or was there at least an element of legitimacy to it? Now, I personally believe via the data, everybody can see or can think objectively. There's more than just a small element here that's factual. Crime has gone up across the country exponentially, and right here in Pennsylvania, if God forbid Fetterman actually gets into power, if that lunatic actually gets the Senate seat, he has some of the worst policies on crime that I've ever seen. I'll link to one of my previous videos so you can check that out. But after 10 years of Fetterman as mayor of Braddock, crime dropped 61% the following year after his departure. 61%. You be the judge.
They want to steal your liberty, your freedom.
Nightmares are becoming real.
Joe Biden is not a savior of America's soul. He will be the destroyer of American greatness.
He's a Trojan horse with Bernie, AOC, Pelosi, Black Lives Matter, and his party's entire left wing.
Joe Biden is basically the Loch Ness Monster of the swamp.
They will force the choice between being obedient to God or to Caesar, because the radical left's God is government power.
Joe Biden is not the savior of America's soul. He will be the destroyer of American greatness. Those are the words of former President Trump here. Rudy Giuliani goes on to say that he's a Trojan horse with Bernie, AOC, Pelosi, Black Lives Matter. Former President Trump's son says that Joe Biden is the leader of the swamp, the leader of the mess that's currently going on in Washington. And then you have Sissy Graham Lynch saying that the left is making the people of America choose what they believe in and an all-powerful government. There is nothing fear-mongering about that. That very thing is happening right before your very eyes. If you want to fully understand what Sissy Graham Lynch said there, you have to be grounded in something greater than yourself. You can't think of yourself as the be-all and end-all. As far as I know, at no other time in our history has the left, or anybody for that matter, tried to make you believe that right is wrong, that wrong is right, that there is no such thing as an absolute truth, that there is no truth, that there is only personal truths, what you personally feel is the truth. Anybody who can think intelligently would come to the conclusion that that's absolutely, utterly ridiculous. Something can only be true and something can only be false. It either is or it isn't. You have the entirety of left-wing politicians teaching everybody, teaching children from K through 12 and then beyond into college, through the Department of Education, mind you, that whatever you feel on that particular day, you are. There is no foundational basis for morality anymore. Everything in this current society of today is subject to how you feel. Think about that just for a moment. Your feelings never stay the same. That's why there are absolutes in society. And one of the most terrifying parts of that whole discussion is the left is telling children that they can make choices with regards to their body that will modify themselves for the rest of their lives. And the worst part about it is, government is telling them they can do that without consulting their parents. And when their parents do find out, said parents must support those children regardless of their lack of higher reasoning skills. I mean, you see in Canada, parents going to jail for not allowing their children sub 10 years old to undergo a sex change. I mean, just think about that for a moment. The government is forcibly taking away your rights over your children under the guise of welfare for your own children, as if you don't know what's best for your kids. It's unthinkable.
They will demolish the suburbs, confiscate your guns, and appoint justices who will wipe away your Second Amendment and other constitutional freedoms.
They'll disarm you, empty the prisons, lock you in your home.
They want to control what you see and think.
And invite MS-13 to live next door. And the police aren't coming when you call, for there is no place to run.
They want to enslave you to the weak, dependent, liberal, victim ideology to the point that you will not recognize this country or yourself.
Someone help me out here. What part of any of what we just heard is factually incorrect? The biggest part of that whole section there was your Second Amendment. It's being eroded away right before your very eyes, and a lot of you don't even realize it. Without getting into a long-winded discussion about the Second Amendment, I've said on many occasions the Second Amendment isn't there for hunting. It's not even there for self-defense. The Second Amendment is there to protect you against a tyrannical government and to keep the government in check to prevent it from going tyrannical. You see, the left automatically associates the Second Amendment with an armed conflict against the government, and that's not necessarily what it means. It's really meant to exist so the citizens have said arms, so they could defend themselves against a tyrannical government. They're meant to be there as a deterrent, so the government doesn't go tyrannical. They're meant to prevent it. For the past 100 years, politicians have been chipping away at your Second Amendment rights, all the way back to the 1930s. You know, this past year, we probably had the worst in-gun control legislation passed as far as the House is concerned. It's probably the worst that we've had in the last 15 years. And the only reason why it was passed is because Pelosi performed backroom deals. That's how most of this unconstitutional stuff gets passed. And make no mistake, it was unconstitutional. Anything that curbs your Second Amendment rights is technically unconstitutional. There's pending legislation to put extra taxes on ammunition. There's pending legislation to put a 1,000% tax on any gun that you purchase. There's pending legislation to curb how much ammunition you can have. There's pending legislation to ban damn near every semi-automatic rifle and handgun out there. You have to be living under a rock or have absolutely no idea what our Constitution says if you truly believe that your Second Amendment rights aren't being eroded right in front of you. And it's all being done under the false premise of safety and security. You know, that's another thing. You notice how these shootings, they only happen whenever A, there's pending legislation, or B, they want to drum up support for a particular piece of legislation. That's the only time these shootings happen. So again, you be the judge. They continue on saying that they want to control, meaning the left, they want to control what you see and think and invite MS-13 to your door. Now, while it may not be that dramatic of inviting MS-13 to your door, hello? Has anybody checked the border lately? Biden has all but welcomed the entirety of freaking Mexico into this country. The man needs votes no matter how he gets them, but he has completely opened our borders. They want to enslave you to the weak, dependent, liberal victim ideology to the point that you will not recognize yourself or this country. While that indeed does sound very dramatic, it is also very profound and very true. If you have ever studied history, if you've even looked at history, throughout the entire time the United States has existed, we have gotten to where we are today because people made the choice to go out and get what they wanted. Individuals, they took pride in themselves. They realized a dream, they recognized something, they fought for it, they educated themselves, and they went after it. Those with severe drive and determination, they succeeded. They are a part of the reason why the United States of America exists as the most powerful country in existence today. But look at the way things are now. Look at the way they're going. Our society has turned into a welfare state. As of right now, our society is run as the productive pay for the unproductive. Now, I do understand that there are those who need help, and I'm absolutely not referring to those people at all. But when you help them, you need to give them the tools to succeed. You need to make them want to succeed. You don't do with the American people like what the Democrat Party did with the black population in the 60s. That's another discussion for another time, but LBJ in specific, he started the ball rolling on making black Americans dependent on Big Daddy government. He completely destroyed the legitimacy of the black family. The left glorifies single motherhood and in turn tells mothers, well, you know what? You don't have to stay with the father. You can break up with him. You can divorce him. Take at minimum half of what he owns. And you can get subsidies from the government. The left has destroyed the nuclear family unit here in America. The left has made victim classes out of everybody. The left has segregated everybody. If you are middle class, they tell you to attack the wealthy. If you're black, the whites are the cause of all your problems. If you're older, young people are going to take away your Social Security. And subsequently, so will all the Republicans, even though that's not on their platform. If you choose to not adhere to religious principles, the Christians are all out there to force you via the government to do what they want you to do based on the Bible, which is quite honestly the complete antithesis of what Scripture teaches. It's just not true. But it doesn't matter. No one chooses to verify anything. And these comparisons can go on and on and on and on. The creation and now existence of victim groups is now endless. And just as a side note, for those of you who don't study history, this is precisely what a Soviet breakdown style of society looks like. One of the largest and subsequently most difficult things you have to do is break down the society so you can control it.
This misinformation system keeps people mentally enslaved to the ideas they deem correct.
The vengeful mob that seeks to destroy our way of life.
The forces of anarchy and communism.
Violent anarchists and agitators and criminals.
Poisoning our schools and burning our cities.
They would keep you locked in your house until you become dependent on the government for everything.
A lot of what was mentioned there we already talked about. Really, the only thing to point out here is the summer of love that's made reference to here. Now, I'm not going to add the different videos here of the cities, of the towns, of the businesses on fire, entire cities burning, completely destroyed. There's really no need to include this here because we all saw it for an entire summer. But remember, these were mostly peaceful protests. And never mind the over $8 billion in damages from them, the dozens of lives lost, and the thousands of officers injured trying to prevent the destruction of their cities. Remember, folks, the only individuals that called for this kind of violence were those of the leftist party. Even the vice president herself called for this violence. If anyone, she should be held accountable. She should be charged with actually inciting violence. But, you know, she's a Democrat. That will never happen.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Joe Biden and the radical left are now coming for our freedom of speech.
Stripped of our religious freedoms,
the fabric of our nation is in peril.
Cops killed, children shot.
Abandoned buildings, liquor stores in every corner.
Anarchists, agitators, rioters, looters, and flag burners.
Mindlessly tear up American cities.
Working men and women of America will get crushed.
Our founding principles are under attack.
A radical socialist agenda.
We cannot fall into the left's trap.
For an obviously defective candidate, these continuous riots, you will bring this lawlessness to your city, to your town, to your suburb.
We've seen violence and chaos in the streets of our major cities.
Weak and dangerous past. Joe Biden let ISIS terrorists rampage across the Middle East.
He also supports deadly sanctuary cities that protect criminal aliens. Late-term abortion of defenseless babies right up until the moment of birth.
The choice in this election is whether America remains America.
When I'm reelected, the best is yet to come.
For the most part, the rest of what you see there is the video creators simply taking clips, pieces, words, and phrases, mashing them all together to convey a particular idea. They aren't clips of individuals making claims, with the exception of one. And we're going to talk about this last piece here in a minute. But the rest of it all mashed together isn't a clip of someone or individuals as a collective making a claim. They're simply taking words and phrases, putting them together to deceptively create a thought. So because there's no basis for it and it's simply clips put together, we're going to chuck it aside here. But the last legitimate claim here that is made is this. And yes, I know former President Trump did in that clip there reference abortion and sanctuary cities, and I really don't think I need to go into those to convey to you the importance of them. I mean, it's pretty self-evident. But what I want to focus on here is what Mike Pence specifically said. He said, "Who we elect in the future is who will decide if America remains America." It was true in 2020, and if I'm being perfectly honest, it is even more true today. It is more true for this 2022 midterm election. Who you elect, as long as we actually do have free and fair elections, who you elect will determine where this country goes. You know, I've said this in several of my videos, and I'm going to say it again. We do say it every year. We say, you know what, this election is the most important election. We need to make sure that the right candidates get in office. But this year, it truly is different. We're at a proverbial fork in the road. We are to the point where the Department of Education has had control of the education system long enough to infuse enough of the youth of America with a positive view of Marxism which has killed millions throughout history. But it's not taught that way. The nuclear family has been completely and utterly decimated. Single motherhood is glorified no matter what race you are, no matter what background you come from. You're taught that biology isn't biology anymore. The youth of America and some very mentally ill adults, they believe that whatever they feel like they are in the moment, they can be. It's just not so. Reality doesn't work that way. You have children potentially destroying their lives with sex changes. They're pumping themselves full of hormone blockers, and the chemicals in the hormone blockers, they're the same chemicals that are used to chemically castrate sex offenders. Again, we are at that proverbial fork in the road. You have the generations that fought in wars to preserve, protect, and defend liberty. Those generations are slowly dying off. The only thing you're going to have left are the youth infused with Marxism now. You now truly have the push for a one-world government, with individuals now saying, you will own nothing and you'll thank us for it.
Now is a historical moment, a time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
The fourth industrial revolution will impact our lives completely. It will not only change how we communicate, how we produce, how we consume, it will change actually us, our own identity, and of course gives life to such policies and developments like smart traffic, smart government, smart cities. What we will see is that everything will be integrated into an ecosystem driven by big data and driven particularly by close cooperation also of governments with business, civil society, and this revolution will come at a breathtaking speed. It will be like a tsunami.
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
By the year 2030, they're trying to get this to the point where your every move is controlled and scrutinized. If you don't believe, as the political ruling class, you are given social demerits. You have a social credit score. If you don't believe me, they already have this in China. I could go on and on for hours about this. The bottom line is truly this. What kind of America do you want? Do you want one that's very similar to where you grew up, where your children can recognize it, where your children, not just you, but your children have individual liberties, where they know the freedom and independence that this country was founded upon? Or do you want to leave a legacy of control? Stalin said, give me your children for 4 years and I will sow seeds that will never be uprooted. Now, the government has had far more than 4 years with the children, with the youth of America for the past several decades. They have infused a form of Marxism that is going to be incredibly difficult to purge from the minds of these young people. I believe the only way to do it is to show them the tenets of what this country was founded upon, teach them true history, where we came from, where we can go, and push the values of individual liberty. And thank you for joining me today for the Vision of Veritas. Be tuned in. I really appreciate you listening to my video here. If you got anything from it, if you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I really want to continue this channel, but I cannot do it without you. Thank you, my friends, and take care.